we will kick things off. Any feedback so far on Respond? Andy, I heard you chiming in there a bit. And any others that have, when Adam, when is it? Has it been
Fortify?
I'm sorry, Fortify. Has it been released out to some of the members yet?
It's released at one.
What's that?
Yeah, it is generally available, and
We're already using it. Yeah.
as of this morning, we have completed 249 actions. So we are making the world a safer place.
That's
I have to admit, as a fellow product manager, Liran, I'm excited for you and a little disappointed that your rate of adoption crushed everything that I've ever released. It's incredible.
I got to tell you, we're grateful for it because we immediately went through and said, how do we raise scores and what do we need to communicate?
Good. And that's exactly what I'm hoping to accomplish with my portion. At this point, what we like to do is we like to release the product out and let it live in the wild for a week or two and collect some feedback from you guys. And we'd love to hear what you guys think, where you'd like to see us next, if you have any, see us go next, and just to collect any questions that you may have regarding Fortify.
Leon, I hope that wasn't a slip about letting it live in the wild.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to get it into our users, right? Because no matter how much testing we do, we're just not, right? We're also running into Microsoft licenses that nobody's ever seen before. There's all sorts of really interesting things that are just
speaking of interesting things from Microsoft. Has anybody, hopefully not on this call, gotten a CSP revocation letter yet? The word on the street is Microsoft is going to be consolidating their CSP program quite a bit over the next few months. So some of the letters already started to get dropped to MSPs. I don't know if anybody has heard that or not.
And in what way are they consolidating? Are they making us all go through distribution? Like, or is there something else?
It sounds like they are starting to revoke certain, again, I'm not sure the criteria, Andy, and I would put this as third party, right? I'm not privy to direct conversations with Microsoft, but this is in speaking with some people that are very familiar with the Microsoft program. And actually, there was a post yesterday on Reddit from an MSP that got dropped. Hey, make arrangements in this upcoming time frame. You'll no longer have access. So yeah, I foresee Microsoft probably doing a mass consolidation, forcing, to your point, Andy, they want to probably have less routes to market, less, ways in which they're billing multiple parties, and they're just going to force everybody through some big disties or LARs. That's my guess.
I wonder if this has something to do with the fact that they're bringing out AI into all their product mix, and they see a new way of managing this. It'd be interesting to see if that had something to play with it.
It's a great question. I'm sure there's some, obviously, financial. Look, I mean, if they're, let's just say, last thing I'll say here, Amy, we'll kick things off.
Yeah.
Let's just say, Andy, that for conversation's sake, there's collectively 100,000 MSPs that are doing sub 1,000 seats. I mean, think of in your Microsoft. I'm not asking anybody to agree with this, but think of the overhead.
Yeah.
So they're probably going, hey, if we can send everything through collectively through Pax8, Ingram, and Synix, role play with me. And we only have to build 3 companies. Right. So that's probably more my guess. Again, completely a guess in terms of a business reason than it is AI based.
Yep.
All right. All right, so let's kick things on off. Adam, are you up first, sir?
I can be.
Let's do that.
All right, let me share my screen, and I'm on a single monitor today. So when I do this, I'm not going to see you all throwing things at me. So we'll just have to bear with.
Okay.
You
Cool.
see my presentation there?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So Unify released in April of this year with really the goal of servicing uninteresting logins that were in fact bad. And so many of you guys have deployed this already, but I kind of wanted to take a snapshot on the Unify adoption. And I touched on this earlier when I said Liron beat me, because I think he's already beaten me with Fortify. But as of now, we have 80 partners using Unify, which is less than 10% of our client base or our partner base. We are looking at about 41,000 devices, but only about 4,500 of them are mapped in Unify, which means that really 4,500 devices are the only ones that are getting the benefit of Unify, which is just a shy, it's had more than 10%. We are doing about 1.5 million events per month that are Unify enhanced. So I was really surprised that this didn't take a faster run up to having more partners use it. And so I've looked at those, I've talked to partners, and hopefully addressing some of the items that I think might help with adoption. So coming soon is the ability to multi-select device mappings. So right now, you basically are going through and you're clicking one by one by one by one, map, which is very tedious. This was a feature I originally had in the original MVP, but took it out because I was afraid that people would map incorrectly right off the bat. And we didn't know how good our confidence scoring was going to be. The confidence scoring is actually pretty solid. So I'm going to be pulling this feature into the production release here soon. Basically, you would set a minimum confidence of, maybe 70% and say, show only devices with a single account. And then it will show you a list of all of those. And you can click select map. And just in my personal observations, anything over about 65% is a pretty sure confidence rating that you can trust, unless you've got some really weird computer IP address combination that causes it to go higher, but I have not seen that. So 65, 75%, only devices with a single selected account, check the box. The beauty of this is this doesn't do anything other than enhance events that are coming in. So by mapping devices, you're not turning on respond, you're not locking people out, you're not generating any more events, it's not creating noise, nothing is happening when you are mapping these other than providing you additional event data that helps you make a decision on whether the event is valid or not, or an attack or not potentially. So go map your devices, please. The next one, which I think is going to be well received, is we have upgraded 6 additional Microsoft events, typically around logins and things like that, where we are being provided the device name from Microsoft. And when I do have the Microsoft device name, I can compare it to the name that's in your RMM and increase that certainty level substantially higher. So what will end up happening is when a device, when an event comes in and it does not have a device name now, and it's just an IP and an OS match, then we will have a confidence score of 50. If the IP and the OS do not match, then we're going to have an unknown device. That's the way it is today. Going forward, when we have the device name in the event and it is a mapped device and a mapped account, then we will start to see that confidence score jump to about a 70% when we see the IP, the OS, and the device name match. So you'll see that happening here soon. That's coming. The other item that was a surprise to me, and it should not have been, but it was we're having an issue where a laptop might move from one IP address to another because they move location. And then before the RMM agent has updated that new IP, an event from Microsoft happens. And what ultimately would happen is we would get a false unknown because we saw that a account was using a OS that matched, but the IP did not. So we're going to test this out and see how it goes. But what we're going to do soon is when an OS matches and an account is mapped, but an IP does not match and we're about to mark it as an unknown device, we're going to make a call into the RMM and get the IP address in real time from the RMM to see if that now matches the IP that we just got from Microsoft or one of the other platforms. And if it does, then we would theoretically hit that 70% confidence rating. If we still do not see an IP match on that real-time check-in, then we will mark it as 0% or unknown. My concern with this is we will drastically increase the number of API calls going to RMMs. And right now we may be the biggest consumer of API RMM data, as it is. So I'm marking this as beta because I don't exactly know how it's going to go right off the bat, but we're going to try it. Andy, I saw a question.
Yeah, what's coming up for me is that I have the ability to change the polling rate for one of my agents into my RMM, which means the IP address may change at Microsoft and you may make a call to my RMM before I have updated my IP address.
Correct.
Can you add a delay in there that says what is your polling rate for your agent so that we know when it's current?
Yeah, that's a possibility. Right now, I'm just going to use the assumption that the slack time between us getting the event and Microsoft and us checking RMM will improve the results, but we may go into doing something like that, Andy.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So the biggest one that I have heard now, though, on the adoption of using Respond with Unify is the situation where you have unmanaged devices being used. So a person logs in from their home computer, does not have an RMM agent, and therefore the device is going to be marked as unknown because it is in fact unknown because it's not managed. And I have really three solutions. One, don't let them do that. Everything should be managed with an RMM agent. We know that, I know that you live in a real world. So solution two is you can go into the respond rule and you can exclude certain accounts from the respond rule from being locked out. So if you do know that you have particular users or accounts that do run in from log in from unmanaged devices, then you can exclude them. And at least the people that you have not exclude are getting the benefit of respond. And then the flip solution to that would be solution three, where you actually have it not triggered for all accounts and you specify specific accounts that need to have Unify with the respond trigger turned on. So there's very sensitive accounts where you know that they are logging in from managed devices. I'd love a better idea. I have yet to come up with one. So I don't know that I want to monopolize the entire meeting today because this is just a small fraction. And I know Fortify is like way more exciting right now. And so I will turn it over to Liron. But if y'all have a good idea for how we can keep Respond running when you do have a situation where there are unmanaged devices, I'd love to hear it. Most y'all have my email, but it's adam@saasalerts.com. If you've got great ideas, I'm all yours because I'd love to have Unify be used substantially more than it is today. I think it's so powerful. And it's a shame that we don't have it on more.
What are from what you've heard, Adam, and again, love to hear MSPs chime in. For example, we see Eric asking about, hey, if my gut is if he had an Essential, he'd be using it. But what's the reason they're not using it? What are they saying? What are,
I think it's a combination of three things. One, they just haven't done it yet. And it's a new thing and they don't want to have to learn it and they got a million other things to do. Our team would love to help you set it up. Number two is all around the unmanaged devices. That's really the biggest one. So once I marry you to Unify, your account, for instance, if you access your account from any device that is not managed by the RMM, we're going to flag that as unknown. And that's really noisy if you do have people that use unmanaged devices on a regular basis. If you do know that that a company only logs in or their employees only log in from RMM managed devices, you can turn it on all day long. So unfortunately, it is the nature of this because MSPs typically don't want to manage home computers and clients don't necessarily want to pay to have home computers managed. So in that instance, Unify actually creates a problem. But done correctly with exclusions and respond, you can get around that if you know which employees are running from unmanaged devices. I did see a message in here from Helen. What about phones? So right now we are excluding mobile devices from Unify, but there are plans to take a look at Intune and Adigy to add in some mobile device piece to that too.
I'll add quickly, it's a mixture of both, Adam. Ignorance on how to use it. I just logged in as you were speaking and learned something new. So I started mapping a couple, but the primary issue, we have a little over 500 users and it just doesn't, one machine to keep, or 10 machines and one customer keeps on trying to map it to a scanner account.
Yeah.
To scanner emails. So
Enrique, there's a new feature coming that's going to allow you to do multiple mappings at the same time. And if you update the confidence level to greater than about 65 and check that only show certain or only ones that have a single mapping, then you're going to be able to do, you can mass map them. So the confidence level is what you're going to want to adjust to get those scanner accounts out of there.
perfect. Thank you.
Good stuff. Anyone else? All right. Leron, over to you.
All right, thank you, Andrew. So I wanted to share some initial numbers with you guys. So we have nearly 300 Microsoft tenants connected to Fortify. The maximum secure score that we have as of this morning is 89.9%, and the minimum score is 6.5%. Yeah, the average score is 45.6%, which is right where we thought it would be. We have 325 ongoing actions that people have submitted, and we're waiting to hear back from Microsoft that you got those points or didn't get those points. 249 completed actions. And the top 3 actions that have been completed are the SaaS Alerts Fortify anti-malware global policy. And to Andy's point from before, he said, we're going in and we're looking to see what to implement. And that one on average is like 25 percentage points because it is a combination of a bunch of different policies together. So if you're looking for a quick boost, depending on your license situation, age of the tenant, and a whole bunch of other variables, you're looking at a good amount of possible points from that global policy. And then the second most popular Fortify recommended action is the SaaS Alerts Fortify anti-spam global policy. That's another group policy that packs 10 to 15% percentage points. All right, so and we have 73 of the first, 38 of the second. And then number 3 on the list is the automatic forwarding to external domains shall be disabled, which is that CSIC recommendation. So I'm really happy that we built that, what we call internally a custom recommendation, and that people are definitely taking advantage of that one in order to disable automatic forwarding to external domains. So I wanted to kind of share with you guys, and that 45% number that we talked about, this is exactly the sort of information that we are currently collecting in order to start presenting you that baseline data that you see in the application today that currently says collecting data.
Got it. And again, for those on so far, has everybody been able to implement so far? And any questions for Leron? If you have begun, do you have any feedback for him or the team?
I have a question regarding, regarding the spam policy. I saw it, I implemented it on my own tenant. Would that conflict at all with Avanan or other solutions you use with 365?
I'd have to take a look at that specific situation. I'm not exactly familiar with what Avanan does or configures, but if you go into security.microsoft.com and you take a look, I think if you hover over the tooltip for that policy, we have a bullet point list of the actual recommended actions in Microsoft that are applied. You can take a look at those kind of each one and then compare it to what Avanan is doing and how you have it configured in order to determine if there's a conflict between the two. I just haven't used it, so I can't speak to it all that well.
I turned it on my own tenant and no one's died yet. So I'm thinking everything looks good. But before I turned it on customers, I wanted to check it out. And usually Avanan and these solutions, they tie in over 365 Defender. So and I guess they'll tweak anything needed or ignore.
Yeah, I'm with you. I kind of feel the same way about roll it out internally, see if people complain and go from there. Andy, do you have a question?
I do. I'm interested in expanding Fortify scoring to include third-party backups, third-party email protection, even integration with other services to say, here's a score from just Microsoft. By the way, you need to be backing up your OneDrive and your email, make sure that that's happening. Oh, you should probably have, a secure gateway or, another service there. And, this is an example to be able to augment that score to be more reflective of cloud services centered or that are Microsoft centered that deliver benefit to a customer.
So that's a very good point. And we all know that you should be backing these things up. And like, we know that Microsoft has data redundancy, et cetera, but if and when something happens, your customer is not going to care about Microsoft's data redundancy, right? They're going to look at you and say, where's my data? So to make a long story short with this one, we want to be here. We want to be careful about how we prescribe security best practices, right? We give you these policies that Microsoft gives, and then you can dismiss them, or you can say there's alternative mitigation that has been applied. The concept that you bring up is an interesting one where I couldn't agree with you more. Like, let's use backup as the prime example. You should have a backup, and if you do have a backup, you roll it out for everyone, you should have points for that. Same thing with monitoring them on SaaS alerts, right? If you monitor a tenant in SaaS alerts, there should be some point value to that. And what we have is, we actually have this, we haven't talked about it too much because we're not quite there yet, but we have what we call a Fortify score, and then we have the Microsoft Secure score. And right now, those two things are one and the same. But the plan and the goal in the future is to build in multiple products so that if you have a customer tenant that has multiple products integrated, they should get more than just the points for Microsoft alone. We'll give them points for a secure Slack instance or a secure Zoom instance if and when we ever do that integration, right? We want to bake in additional products to that. But an interesting concept that you bring up is you actually get to create a policy on your own and say backup, and we believe that backup is worth 5% of an organization's overall security posture. And we have backup enabled on all of these customers, but this one refuses to pay for backup for whatever reason. So when we put the score in front of them, we're going to tell them, hey, you could get an additional 5 percentage points here if you do security backup. And then you can explain to them to do that. But I think we're probably quite a bit away from doing that, right? We want to do other products. There's a whole bunch of other things that we need to do first, if you ask me.
Liron, if I may just say, in effect, what we're talking about is defining a compliance policy around cloud protection. And that may be outside of Microsoft Score, but has other elements to it. And being able to score against that policy unique to that customer would be very helpful.
Yeah, that's the direction that we're going in. I'd like to see us add other products, or maybe we do what you're talking about, right? If this is the sort of thing that we start hearing and people are like, yeah, forget the other products, right? We want the ability to get points for all these other extra things that we're doing and come up with a different type of score where the Microsoft score is only a component of that, then that's the direction that we're going in, right? But generally speaking, there's 3 components. There's the email tenant, which in most cases is going to be Microsoft. there are the other products, and then there's the custom stuff you're doing. So that is definitely something that we're looking at. Right. Thank you, Andy. I see that Eric has a question.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on this already. And could you review again when you go to dismiss an action? There's the risk accepted and the alternative mitigation. I recall that there was a points difference. If you did one of them versus the other, it ignored the points, or can you explain that again?
Sure, great question. The classic example I always like to use, because it seems like every MSP I talk to, they all have one customer that for whatever reason, MFA is the worst thing in the world, and they're just not going to do it. So for that customer, right, one of the policies is like MFA, enforce MFA for global admins. And the owner or whatever CEO happens to be a global admin perhaps, and refuses to get MFA. So in that situation, my recommendation is, okay, you guys don't want MFA. Let me educate you why that's a terrible idea. Okay, you still don't want it? Awesome. Sign this legal paperwork that basically means that you're increasing the likeliness of you getting hacked by exponentially by not having MFA. So great, sign this. Then you would go into Fortify and you would take that specific policy and you would just dismiss it because you don't want to see it on your list of actions, right? That list of actions is kind of like this to-do list to at least ponder over time. But these guys have specifically told you, we are never getting MFA. You say risk accepted, and your tech could go in and say, yep, risk accepted, owner, so-and-so, signed document, so-and-so, it's stored over here. And when that occurs, they're just not going to get those points. With risk mitigated, you are basically telling us and you're telling Microsoft that you are handling this in some other way and you're going to get the points in some other way, right? So if you wanted to cheat, obviously don't condone cheating, but you could go in there, basically do select all and say alternative mitigation across the board, and your score is going to go up.
So the example, Eric, if I could just chime in, if I hear Liron correctly, it would be, you know, this, we put in a ZTNA solution as opposed to MFA. Not that, again, this is a role play, Liron, but the mitigating piece here is a ZTNA solution, and that's how we access M365 instead of using MFA. So we feel this compensatory control is more than adequate, blah, blah, blah.
That's exactly it. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Do we have
All
any
right.
other Fortify questions, thoughts, anything else you guys want to share with us?
I had a quick question. I wanted a point of clarity about a tooltip when we enable the product. The last line items essentially states that if we remove a client from the product, it's going to revert back the changes. So that mean that you're going to roll back any changes that were implemented in the environment back to what they had before implementing?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So let's say you enable 5 Fortify policies for an organization. Those guys do not want to be one of your customers anymore. So when you go into SaaS alerts and delete them, we're going to undo those policies.
Is there any way to prevent that? For example, like say for the point of contention I can see with some clients may be like, hey, we're managing it as a product, but say if we do this as an ad hoc thing, that we've implemented these changes and as say a project and not say ongoing care, they may not want to remove those security controls, even if they leave us as a client.
So that's something that we could certainly take a look at. What we wanted to do, right, was to kind of protect all of us from the customer who hires you to come in and increase their secure score. And after they reach a satisfactory score, are like, okay, we're done here, right? Because that's not, in my opinion, that is a terrible thing to do, because even if you have a high score, there's no such thing as a silver bullet. Like,
agreed. I appreciate that you I rather that you defaulted the way you did. I'm just I want to make sure that I'm very clear on that, so that when we go and do potentially some of these actions, that we know and convey that expectation to a client when we sell the product.
Yeah, I mean, just basically tell them that they just can't ever fire you.
Right? You're going to roll back all your security features. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So you're welcome. So the last thing that I want to add in here, Andrew, is that we've mentioned this before, but I think it's worth reiterating that version 1.1 and either 1.1 or 1.2 is going to be those benchmark numbers that we've started collecting, and just, we're starting to get some really good data around that. And then the second part of this is going to be the templates, right, that everyone is talking about. And the plan there is we wanted to give you guys this tool as quickly as possible, rather than sit back in our development world and build up 150,000 recommended actions. We're giving you an initial subset of 40 to 50 recommended actions that you can implement. And then we want to hear from the community. What we've heard so far is people seem to like the CS framework. There's obviously a bunch of other frameworks out there. So we're starting to look at how do we implement those actions. And then as part of the whole templating system, we can build a template, and that template will be the CS template. And when you select a customer, you'll be able to select that template. It'll select all the actions for that template, and you can basically click apply, and it will go ahead and do that. Plus, we have a few super secret things that we're not really going to talk about, but I think are going to be really interesting. They're just very, very early stage at this point.
Great stuff. Okay. Amy, you said speaking of templates, we have something on that, all right? Is it with Amanda?
Yes, Amanda's gonna hop in and talk about some new Respond templates that are available.
Yes. Yep. Thanks, Amy. So the Cool Rules winners are now officially in productions. Those 4 templates are there. You guys can take advantage of them. But in addition to that, there's a new filter for Respond rules for the event-based rules. The filter is specifically the user agent field. What logically actually came to us and said, they've noticed some of the events that had user agent that included Python. So instead of this being an actual device someone's using, it actually listed it as Python. And so that was a way for them to understand that something dangerous was happening and that it wasn't an action being taken by a typical user. And so that user agent field has now been included in Respond as a filter as well. And then coming soon, as of this afternoon, we'll have an additional template also recommended to us by Logically. It's MFA fatigue from abusive IPs. And so this template is specifically designed to look for the MFA off failure. And then it has a couple of additions of IP address threat field. So IP address is threat known, is attacker known, and I want to say is something else off the top of my head, but it combines a lot of those options of the IP address threat fields. And then we'll give you a signal, that the MFA has failed. So the part of the account has already been hacked, but that then you can tell from the IP address data that it's a malicious kind of attack. So that'll be out this afternoon. And I think Amy's going to post a comment on Reddit when we do officially launch that.
And Amanda,
I'll do that.
just ask collectively, is anybody would anybody like an overview of applying templates, or is everybody 100% A-okay with templates while we're just talking about them?
I have a question around this communication. I think this is very powerful.
Andy, you sound really far away.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this better?
Oh,
or
that's
no?
better. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I have a question about this communication. This is a very powerful augmentation of Respond. And I hear that you're posting this in Reddit. Is there any way that we could start and one, that we could see this within SaaS Alerts itself if we're not in the Reddit post? One, to get that kind of thing. And two, where we'd go to see these template modifications and their use case, because we've heard it in this chat today, but if I wanted my engineers to see it and they're not part of this, I then have to go remember this. And so I would love to be able to have, this is where we go to see all these templates. Here's what they just added today. And wow, this is how we want to enhance our rules.
Yeah, so it's actually part of the newsletter that Amy is sending out for this month. Everything that I just talked about will be in the newsletter. So you'll get that newsletter and you could share that with any of your additional employees that you'd like to, as well as the release notes that are posted within inside of SaaS alerts. Whenever we are releasing items, they're also posted there. In
These are
addition to the Reddit
great
community.
communications, but I'm asking for a way within SaaS alerts and an operational view, because you basically have given me and notice that this is occurring. That's great. And it's in an email newsletter, but I want to be able to revisit this from an operational perspective and say, hey, I'm onboarding someone new. By the way, these are some of the templates and how they have value, and so that they might be creative and come up with some new rules on their own. So I'm asking for a repository someplace within SaaS alerts that we could go say, this is why this template exists and how it was recommended and it came online this time, type of thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're familiar with using the templates, if you go to the rule templates within Respond, they are all listed right there. And that should be part of your onboarding process, taking a review of what templates are available to you and making sure that they're activated per the organization.
Totally get what you're saying. I'm saying, what's the value proposition for each of those elements so that it can be trained more easily to a new employee, is where I'm kind of driving with this. And maybe it's just the wrong forum, but I'm just saying this is valuable and I'm grateful for it. How I educate new employees or further educate existing ones around this is what I'm looking to be able to make this an easier burden for the MSP owner.
It's actually a really good, just tangentially, it's a really good point, Andy, not just for SaaS alerts. In general, onboarding employees and being able to get them up to date on your tool sets. It's not an easy thing. And so it's more so like, is there, and I'm paraphrasing, but is there a wizard when I click on said template to go, well, the reason you're implementing this top reasons, 3 reasons is X, Y, and Z, if I'm hearing you correctly, like just like kind of like
it's also a QC method, because then we could say, hey, look, what templates aren't we implementing and why aren't we implementing them, or what's their use case? In other words, it brings a way for me to do quality control, because I may not be intimately involved in this in the future. And so I would want to know, where am I lacking? Kind of what Fortify is doing, but do this for Respond rules.
Andy, are
Yeah,
you
so-
envisioning this living in the platform?
Pardon me?
Are you envisioning this living in the platform?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so we can absolutely look at adding a description kind of column to the Respond templates. It would still have to reside within Respond and be something as part of attached to the template. So it would be something you'd have to review within there.
So I'm throwing this out there. Think of Fortify for SaaS alerts around the Respond rules that you have. Is there such a methodology that could be applied to this?
It's actually a cool thought.
That's kind of what I'm trying to point out here. Leron, is this making any sense to you?
I need you to give us an example, Andy.
Okay.
I think I've got it, actually. Let me try, Andy. So there is a score for SaaS alerts, and you can increase your score by implementing certain Respond rules that are templates. Or you could increase your score by connecting Unify, or other parts of our software, and using all of the features would increase the score that you are provided for SaaS alerts.
And these are the reasons why you would have them, because you're really kind of explaining, here's the policy that's missing in Microsoft, and here's how you would augment your score. Here's the template that's missing in Respond. Here's how this would enhance your security posture for this customer. And
It's like a
would
SaaS
then
alert usage score with like recommended actions to increase your score and improve your usage of the platform.
And this adds to a policy that you would have for Fortify, that the end customer would say, hey, look, I see you're monitoring all this stuff, but we're actually responding in instance when these triggers occur. And this makes you even more secure than you were with just the Microsoft policies by themselves.
Yes, so we plan to do that. And we
Awesome.
plan to do that in what we call the Fortify score. But again, just we're version 1.0 of Fortify, and it's been said internally here that Fortify is 15% feature complete. So we have a long way to go, and this is the type of feedback that we want to hear from you guys, because I couldn't agree with you more, right? If you automatically block outside approved location logins, like that's a very powerful thing that you're doing for your customers, and there's a lot of value in doing that. So we're absolutely looking at incorporating these things. Same thing with RMM monitoring, a whole bunch of other things.
And this builds a real great thing around cyber compliancy and insurance and value proposition for the MSP to the customer.
So Mike, I had asked a question about the templates. You said I'm not opposed to it. Do you mean seeing where they're at? Or was that something else?
Yeah, I was just, you were talking about going through the templates or the respond rules. I think there was a couple people that nodded their head, yes, and I just agreed with it.
Okay, just kind of like an overview where they are and how to implement them per se at a high level.
I think you just asked of how showing everybody how to apply a template, I think is what you asked.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
No. I was simply, a lot of times we assume as product owners that we as our customers know our customers are using them. No disrespect, Amanda, right? That our customers are using them and know where they're at and how to apply them, and not, I don't want to take that assumption. So that's kind of the reason I asked it. And just wondering, Amanda, if you could maybe just share where they're at, how to apply them.
I just think the whole discussion that we just had about the scores and the descriptions of explaining the rules or the respond rules, I think that could be very, very beneficial as well. So I'll give you my +1 on that.
Right, so I'm sharing now, hopefully everyone can see.
Yeah,
So when
that's
you
perfect.
log in to Respond itself, you'll come to the main page, which will have a list of rules. These are the rules that are available for you to turn on per organization or account. The templates are the second item in the menu in the upper left corner. So if you click on rule templates, this is where you'll find the repository of templates. I'm in our dev instance, so these may or may not be what you see in production. They're most likely not what you see, but they'll include some of them. So for instance, the Cool Rules Challenge, Max Thornton was one of the entries, and he was the winner actually. And so if you came in here and said, okay, this is a Unify unknown device type alert, you can hover over the conditions and see exactly what this alert is doing. So it's looking for this event plus these other filters. You can see that it's planned to be always on, and what it does, it will block the sign in and expire accounts if you turn this on. So if you're like, this sounds valuable, I really need to do this, I started using Unify and I want to be able to manage the unknown device list, you would click the duplicate button. And now it's going to ask you if you want to create a new rule. You click create button. And at this point, it's going to switch you over into the rules kind of page and load the rule already predefined with everything that was included. So as we talked about, it's for the conditions are on the third tab, and it's looking at all the different events. And then it's got all of your Unify filters included here. So everything comes preloaded. You'd want to come to the organizations and accounts tab. You'd want to include which organizations and or which accounts you want to set it for. And then you want to review, so by default, it's blocking sign in and expiring accounts. It's coming as critical. You may say this is only medium for me, or, change it. You might want to add SMS messaging as part of it. So you'd want to review that. Once you're done with it, you want to make sure you give it a name that'll mean something for you. It's automatically going to take the name of the template and then add the word duplicate. So I'm sure this won't mean anything necessarily to your team. So you want to say whatever this is. So in your case, it might just be something more like Unify unknown device. And you can say, created on whatever day, right? 8/17, something like that. And then you can choose to just create it as a draft right away if you're still figuring out how you want to deploy it, if you haven't figured out all your organizations. Or if you have everything completed, you can press the activate rule button, and this will turn it on immediately for the organization's accounts based on the conditions that are outlined here. As soon as you saved it, it'll create it, and I'm gonna just go back to leave this. It'll then appear in your rules list on the main page.
Amanda, may I ask, would it be a big deal if we had a box that just said why this rule exists and what it does for in English without having someone to have to go through and read the steps. I'm thinking that that would be another way of educating why these templates have value, or that we could do that within our own organization. This rule was created specifically for this customer, and these were the conditions that we are attempting to address.
Yeah, so like we just talked about earlier, we can definitely add to the rule templates a column that's kind of a description that synchronizes everything, so it's easier to read through. Are you saying though, you want to know specifically when you turn a rule on, why you turned it on and for what organization you turned it on for?
I'm saying I want to know why I turned it on and what is it solving. Okay, and so I want what I'm really trying to get to is to get to people to think about these combinations of steps and how they add value. And I think that happens when we put this stuff back in English. Like what came up for me was, why don't I take AI and copy these statements in and say, okay, AI, give me another good template that might actually work. Based on these rule sets. And I'm just trying to say, if I had this as a text related to these templates, I might be able to apply them uniquely and modify them in a way that adds greater value.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
well, I hear you, Andy, and what I think we could look at doing is, as Amanda said, add a template description so that you know what the template is doing. And then likewise, if you open up a specific rule, you could, if it's a template, we can start off with the description and then you can edit, or if it's a brand new rule that you've written on your own, you could enter in your own description.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think it's a really good idea, especially like once you have 20 rules or 5, 10, becomes kind of much. You have new text coming on. I think it makes sense.
Can I ask another question about respond rules? And I don't want to sidetrack anything here with respond, because I think you had other stuff to cover, Andrew. I'm sorry. And I can also get with support too. We had created a respond rule a couple months ago to do a stale account cleanup. And when we did that, we were getting a lot of accounts locked out that were logging in every single day, like they're using Outlook, for example. Is there any way around that? Or should I just be going to support on that? Question.
In this specific case, I'd like to go through support so we can get the
Okay.
details. We can look into that specific
Perfect.
reasoning.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else, any questions about applying a rule template and respond?
Appreciate you doing that, Amanda. Really. Good stuff. Okay. Anyone else before? I had one thing to share in the last few minutes here. I wanted to ask you guys if this was helpful when I show you if this could be helpful, but anything on what was covered so far today? Okay. So I created this document. I wanted to ask you guys your thoughts on it. I created it with you in mind first, and then was wondering if we could collaborate with certain pieces of this that you could use for customer facing or prospect facing. So when you look at, the why, right, behind the release of, and I'm sorry, I am, as Eric pointed out, I'm fighting a little under the weather. The latest is Fortify, correct? It's getting all the names.
That's correct.
For example, right? So the why behind this is challenging. Looking at number one, right? The complexity of all the different M365 services. First off, let's just stay there on this particular one. Does A, that make sense? And B, could you see this as a mechanism to say to a customer, hey, you guys are utilizing M365 in a vast number of ways. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what business processes you're using it for and what data and systems that are affected by that. And what, so because we want to take a look at really around data classification. Number one, where is the data? Where's the flow of this data? Is it important? And what are the security settings of this? So does that make sense in terms of the overall complexity of managing it, not only for yourselves at scale, but for a customer?
Andrew, this would be awesome in conjunction with a SaaS alerts evaluation to say, these are the things, this is why it's complex. These are all the nuances that aren't being addressed, and not giving away what needs to be addressed, but saying these, on a scale of 1 to 10, with SaaS alerts, you might say your complexity of service might be a 5. You're not really current with how Microsoft has evolved. Your permissions aren't granularly set for this reason, and based on your customer profile, these are the gaps that we identify.
Yeah, it's really, really good feedback, Andy. Kind of like I when I think about the complexity of service, I really, think about, always about how does the business make money? Well, if let's just say you deal with healthcare, okay, as an example. Well, we know that, PHI, right? PHI is very important in terms of any type of regulation and then any type of oversight. God forbid that gets in the wrong hands or breach. So it's conversational to ask that organization, hey, you guys use M365 a lot. Walk me through, right, how your organization is sharing data. Does anybody share customer data via SharePoint at all? You have remote transcription people, you have, so that's that point. Is that where you're going with it as well, Andy?
I'm not, not just for healthcare, but this could be for any organization
Of
because
course.
of what's happening with the government saying, hey, look, if you're going to have a security incident, you have to report it within 4 days. Most people don't even know they've had a security incident after 180 days. So there's that kind of an awareness, right? That talks to the evolution, but also the awareness that things are happening in the background is something that, in conjunction with Unify, this could really be powerful.
Got it. Any other feedback on that piece, by the way, from anyone else? Next, that comes top of mind is, not only granularity of permissions, but something we talk about often, which is conditional access policies, right? And Leron, you brought one up right earlier, or about MFA for the executive getting, I don't want MFA, fair. And Bo Bullock has talked about how threat actors not only take advantage of conditional access policies, but again, does the customer understand when they're doing these exceptions, the security quote unquote goodness that they're breaking within M365? Like, what would you say? Do you think your customer knows? My guess is they don't, right? So anyway, any thoughts on a document like this, and then working collaboratively on something customer facing? Because this is what it is for scale, for why some of the whys behind why SaaS alerts did this for you guys.
This would be a great tool for sales, helping understand helping the client understand what the reason behind it and the risks, right? That's always the challenge and the value, and all these 10 items, really reach out to the value.
Right, exactly. And again, it's like, we're not doing this just because we think it's, just checking boxes. You're telling me this is how you use this in your business around these critical processes, around these critical areas that impact a significant portion of your revenue, right? I would argue that if you ask most companies these days, just around email alone, right? If you shut down email, would it impact does it have a revenue impact to your organization? Eric, what would your clients say?
Yeah, I mean, the requirements and security is ever changing in this cloud world that we're in, right? And this helps us explain to them what we're discovering and what we're going to do to address it. And the reason why the costs are going to go up, because we have to do this extra work.
Yeah, I'm just curious though, would your clients say email is impactful to their revenue or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. It's the lifeblood of the company. So much company data is in that email. And then, just to go on the tangent of spoofing, if something happens, revenue escapes the company real quick, and their clients that they're communicating with could have their revenue escape because of phishing attempts and risks.
Supply chain risk.
All the question about how do you make money? Well, we make money because our clients give us money, and if the clients give the money they're supposed to give us to someone else, there's a big problem there. Right.
And it's just things as simple as, people are like, well, again, it's not that big a deal. You just maybe be inquisitive. Does any of your APAR go through email?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
And then that also addresses the other conversation earlier today that, where is your company data? Is it on personal devices? Why aren't you managing where your company data is? Well, we don't want to put Big Brother on personal devices. Well, we need to get past that perspective, right? Your company data is on devices that you're not managing. That needs to be addressed. And this will address a little bit of that.
Got it.
Andrew, I'd love to work with one or two of the folks on this call and help get this converted over to be more customer facing for y'all, and we can put it into our in with our other partner brandable marketing materials. I can of course take a first stab at it, but I'd love one or two volunteers to be able to review it before we release it to the public to make sure that it fits the needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, Andy, I appreciate it. I hope this is helpful for others as well. And Amy, I sent this over to you, correct?
Yes, I have it. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I know we're at the top of the hour. Again, awesome as always, everybody. And yeah, Andy, I'll let Amy distribute if that's okay. I'm just looking at the comments real quick here.
Thanks, Eric.
And then Eric had one closing question. Is SaaS alerts categorizing Fortify as change control to detection and response? Did you see that, Leron?
I did see it, yes. I think at some point I wouldn't be comfortable calling it that just now, especially with just having version 1.0 out there. I think we have some more growing up to do before I'd be comfortable claiming those 4 things.
But you are welcome to. Good stuff. All right. Anything else, folks? All right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. And wishing you all a great week. We'll look forward to seeing you all next Thursday, same time.